What's going on, Vikings fans? Welcome into Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and coming up on today's show, we're going to be looking at the top quarterback targets for the Minnesota Vikings to back up J.J. McCarthy. As we got word earlier this morning on Wednesday, it is official. J.J. McCarthy will be QB1 in Minnesota. It was coming in from Tom Pelissero, who tweeted this out, saying the Vikings have rejected multiple trade calls on J.J. McCarthy, telling other teams they're moving forward with him as their quarterback. The team plans to add a veteran, but they're not pursuing Aaron Rodgers at this time. McCarthy now enters the offseason as QB1. Very interesting. I will say that teams were calling on J.J. McCarthy. I'm sure that was a quick hang-up for the Vikings, but clearly they have made it clear that J.J. McCarthy is the QB1. Now the next step, we got to go find that backup quarterback. But first, you guys let me know. Name a quarterback the Vikings should sign. My number one guy is Joe Flacco. But I also got another option that we'll get to in about 5-6 minutes on today's show about a trade target for the Minnesota Vikings at the quarterback position. It's not Justin Herbert. It's a veteran backup. So stay tuned for that. You guys let me know. Name a quarterback the Vikings should sign. And we could start it off with probably the name that will be typed the most in the comments section, Joe Flacco, Mr. Elite, Super Bowl champion quarterback, Joe Flacco. So, listen, when we're talking about these backup quarterbacks, I'm not going off the process where it's like, oh, we need to find a guy like if J.J. McCarthy gets hurt. Like, I'm more going off a guy I want in the room with J.J. McCarthy. And I think Joe Flacco would be a great voice to have in J.J. McCarthy's ear. Because Joe Flacco, he won a Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens when Baltimore had one of the most loaded rosters in the NFL that season. They had the best defense in the league. They had a bunch of weapons offensively. And I think just Flacco would be a great ear or a great voice in JJ's ear of just saying like, hey, you're going to go through ups and downs. Let me walk you through this. I'll break it all down for you. You know, because obviously there's a lot of ups and downs in the NFL season. And sometimes with a young quarterback, you can kind of get lost in the, the highs and the lows. And I think Flacco would be able to kind of steady the ship very, very easily. And, Flacco, like he's not the same guy that he was in Baltimore. You guys see the stats up on screen right now. I mean, touchdown to interception ratio is not great over the last 4 seasons, but he is still a guy, and I don't mean this in a hyperbolic way, but if, let's just say J.J. McCarthy, I'm not going to say the word, but let's just say something happens to J.J. McCarthy where he isn't available on a given Sunday, I would have confidence in Joe Flacco stepping in for a game or two if needed. Now, I think the biggest reason why I want Flacco is just to have that veteran in the quarterback room. But if it all goes bad and Flacco does have to step in there for a game or two, like that would be a pretty good option. Just be like, hey, we're playing the Chicago Bears at home. JJ's out. Flacco, come and man the ship because the Vikings will still have a great defense. Hopefully they have a really good running game next season. You're still throwing to Justin Jefferson. Like I still think the Vikings offense would be able to get up to like 24, 27 points. You just hope the defense has a good game, which they probably will a lot of the time next season. So Flacco's number 1 for me, but number 2 on my list, I'm going to go my red-headed brother in here, Carson Wentz. Now, Carson Wentz spent this past season with the Kansas City Chiefs, around Patrick Mahomes, around Andy Reid. And if you guys were watching the show this time last year, I was such a big component of everybody in life is a product of their own environment. And that was a big reason why I was a bigger Sam Darnold believer than many, because Darnold, where was he before the Vikings? He was with the San Francisco 49ers. He was around Shanahan. He was around Brock Purdy. And Carson Wentz this past season, he was around Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Matt Nagy. So could Wentz, be this year's Darnold? Very, very unlikely. But let's just say, J.J. were have to go down and you would Wentz behind him. That's at least a guy, the fan base could rally around. And I'm not saying you could go win a Super Bowl with Wentz, which is obviously the Vikings' goal this season. It is Super Bowl. I don't want to say it's Super Bowl or bust for a first-year rookie quarterback, but, I would be a little disappointed if the Vikings go one and done in the playoffs. And I think Wentz, with how good this Vikings team is, with how good this coaching staff is, if he were to have to come in and play a game or two, he could go get a win. So Carson Wentz is number 2, and number 3 for me. How about 2 gloves? How about Teddy 2 gloves Bridgewater? Now, I am a 25-year-old Vikings fan, if you guys don't know. And Teddy, so he was probably the quarterback when I was a freshman in high school. I was probably about 14 years old at the time, and He was like the guy that like really made me fall in love with the Minnesota Vikings. I just loved everything about him. So for the vibes, I'm 100% in. Like that would be pretty cool if Teddy returned to be the backup quarterback. Now this would just again be a voice in J.J. McCarthy's ear. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and he's going to dominate the NFL landscape or dominate the NFL world, and he's going to go back to that former first round pick, which he was. But I think he would be a very, very interesting option. And I think Teddy, he would have some interest. It made me sick to my stomach seeing Teddy check in for the when Goff got hurt in the divisional round against the Commanders. It really made my stomach turn a little bit. So getting him back to Minnesota, I think he's a solid, tertiary option for the Vikings here. But what about a guy like Drew Lock? I'd probably throw him in that Carson Wentz bucket where you're getting Drew Lock not for the voice in J.J. McCarthy's ear, but you're just kind of getting him for a guy that, he's got a lot of arm talent. He's got some upside to his game. And if J.J. were to have to go down, you could just throw in Drew Lock and, just kind of see what happens. But I don't really have a ton of interest on Lock being the backup quarterback. And another guy that I got mixed-ish feelings about here, Jameis Winston. Now, for the vibes, I get it. For the aura around Jameis, I understand it. But also, I don't love him as a backup quarterback and a voice in McCarthy's ear. So, listen, I have mixed feelings about Jameis. I think he could come in and maybe Kevin O'Connell can get the reckless nature out of his game, and we could see the best version of Jameis with the Minnesota Vikings. But I don't know, man. He just throws a lot of picks. He's kind of a goofball, which I also love, but I also don't really like. So I'm kind of in between on Jameis. It's not like I would be getting up here and killing Kwesi for bringing Jameis in, but I also wouldn't get up on here and be praising him, which I would if they would go get a Joe Flacco or this guy they could trade for here in a second. But there are also 5 other names out there. You got the guy that was on the Vikes roster last offseason, Brett Rippon. Still got a guy like Desmond Ridder out there. No real interest in Ridder. Case Keenum. Out of all 5 right here, it is Case Keenum. Then there's a massive gap between the other 4. We also got a guy like Trey Lance, Easton Stick as well. But I do want to get this take out here. I understand why the Vikings have been waiting this long to go get a backup quarterback. I think it's pretty obvious they're doing this for the comp pick formula because after the Vikings lost Cam Robinson, they lost Sam Darnold. They are in line to have a 3rd and a 4th or 5th round comp pick for next season. But if you go sign a veteran backup quarterback like a Joe Flacco, would take you out of that 3rd round comp pick running. But waiting for a backup quarterback this long, I don't love it because, listen, I love J.J. McCarthy. I think he's going to be great, but call a spade a spade. He is a rookie quarterback coming off a torn meniscus, has never started in the National Football League. I would have preferred to have a higher-end backup behind him, but I understand the comp pick thing. So I'll toss this question your guys' way here. Should the Vikings have signed a backup QB earlier? What do you think? Give me a Y for yes. Give me an N for no. I'll have to wait and see before I answer this, but I'll ask you guys this first. Should the Vikings have signed a backup QB earlier? Y for yes, N for no. All right, so the one guy I will pound the table for the Vikings to bring in and trade for because it doesn't affect the comp pick formula, the Vikings should trade for Tyrod Taylor to be their backup quarterback. And first off, Tyrod, he would be on the books for $6.8 million that the Vikings trade from. So he wouldn't have a huge cap hit this year. Vikings still have around $35, $37 million to spend in free agency. Why do they have that much? I have no idea. Maybe they're waiting on an in-season trade. But I do think Tyrod would make the most sense out of all of these guys because he's like Joe Flacco, but he's just a better quarterback than Joe Flacco is at this point. And why it makes sense, number one here, the comp pick formula. Trading for a quarterback obviously doesn't affect the comp pick situation here, and that seems like why the Vikings haven't signed a backup just yet. So it makes sense on the Tyrod front. And also, he's got lots of experience, man. He's bounced around the National Football League, has played in 14 seasons, and also part of him that I really, really like is there's never been any real drama around Tyrod, and he's been in some drama-filled situations. Like the whole thing about him with the Chargers and Justin Herbert, of him getting punctured in the lung, and then he was out. He didn't really make too much noise. So I like the experience. I like the no-drama mindset. He's played with the Giants. He's played with the Jets, so he can handle the huge media. And I think if you're just a guy that, honestly, the locker room can rally around. And, he could also be a plug-and-play starter. If JJ would have to go down for a month and you said, hey, we're riding with Tyrod, okay, I expect the Vikings to win some of those games. It wouldn't be a huge fall-off to where it would be I don't know, the Vikings bringing in like a Desmond Ritter to be the backup, or one of these that would be completely disaster scenarios here. So listen, I would have the most faith out of all of these quarterbacks we're talking about on today's show in Tyrod Taylor stepping in and winning games out of everyone. Like even the Joe Flaccos, even the Carson Wentz's. Like I would have the most faith in Tyrod stepping in there, manning the ship, and just buying J.J. McCarthy enough time if he were to go down for injury for whatever reason. And also, the Jets just signed Justin Fields. Like they signed him to a 2-year, $40 million deal. Fields will be QB1. They're in New York next season, so maybe they're going to try to move off Tyrod. Maybe the Vikings could throw them like a future 6th-round pick or future 7th-round pick or something. But listen, Tyrod's my number one guy right now. But you guys let me know. Would you trade for Tyrod Taylor? Give me a T for trade. Give me a P for pass. You guys let me know your thoughts. I'm doing it in a heartbeat. Again, this is just for like a 7th, 6th-round pick, whatever it may be. So you guys let me know. Would you trade for Tyrod Taylor? T for trade. P for pass. If you guys also want to hit me up on Twitter, that's a handle right there at the bottom of your screen, at Pat Sieps. Give me a follow over there, and I'll give you guys a follow right back. But we'll see you guys next time. As always, Skol Vikes.